everybody, welcome to Brews Views. Today we're going to create a 2-point perspective grid. This is the second in a continuing series of videos on perspective. If you missed the first video, 1-point perspective grid, go back and check it out at Brews Views. Mastering perspective will really help your drawings to shine. You will be able to create that illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface in drawings like these. These types of drawings can be used for backgrounds, layouts, in games, digital paintings, concept drawings, sketches, anything that you want. Once you master perspective, it's all yours. So let's get started. Before we begin with the 8 easy steps, I would like to share with you why I have my rectangle divided into equal thirds. Dividing a rectangle or your bounding box this way is called the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a compositional tool that allows you to divide your space up, and where these lines intersect tend to be the safe areas in which you can place your objects or your figures. You always want to avoid compositions that start in the middle, because this kind of forces you to move the energy of the composition in only one of a few directions, like playing tic-tac-toe. Symmetrical compositions are great if you want to create throne rooms, show the power of the king, but for the most part, asymmetrical compositions placed a little off-center, either to the left or to the right, are the best. Let's get started with perspective. There are a couple of things that you need to set up when you're beginning your 2-point grid. One is that you want to have a ground plane. 2, you want to have a horizon line. 3, a station point. The station point is vertical and it represents where you are standing. The horizon line represents your eye level. And if you remember in lesson 1-point perspective, there's a cute little animation showing how to find your eye level. Once we have the ground plane, the horizon line, and the station point established, make sure that your station point is below your ground plane and outside of your composition area. Once you have the ground plane, horizon line, and station point established, now we want to create a 90-degree angle from the station point to the horizon line. And a 90-degree angle is a corner that looks like that. Where these lines intersect with your horizon line, you have your vanishing points. Vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2. From vanishing point 1 and 2, you are going to create a couple of diagonal lines. Now that you've established your vanishing points, you're going to create 2 more diagonal lines. These diagonal lines are going to meet at the point where the ground plane and the station point intersect. We're going to call that X. So from vanishing point 1 to X, and from vanishing point 2 to X, we get 2 diagonal lines. These 2 diagonal lines are going to have a name in our demonstration. From vanishing point 2 to X is going to be A. From vanishing point 1 to X is going to be B. We're going to take the length of diagonal line A and we're going to measure it from the vanishing point to the point where it ends on the horizon line. This is A1. We are then going to take line B from vanishing point 1 to X, and we're going to measure that from vanishing point 1 to where it ends on the horizon line and put a little dot. This is B1. Now don't let these steps confuse you or scare you off. You do this once and you save it, and you can use it for many compositions afterwards. If you are working in Photoshop, you can transform it and make it larger or smaller. If you are working traditionally, you can make it pretty big on a piece of tracing paper and save that and use it over and over again for many of your traditional compositions. So now we have point A1 and point B1. The next step is to create equal distances on the ground plane starting at X. So I'm going to use my ruler and mark off 1 inch intervals. From vanishing point 1, you are going to draw diagonal lines or perspective lines from that point, vanishing point 1, to the marks that we just made on the ground plane. Then you're going to do the same thing from vanishing point 2. You can see that the squares in your grid are already getting smaller in equal increments. If you want to extend your grid a little bit further, all you need to do is create a line that cuts through the corners of your squares. Once you've done this, you can go from vanishing point 2 through the intersection of that line. Now you can see that each one of these squares is getting smaller as it recedes back into space at equal intervals. And that is your 2-point perspective grid. You can use this to make boxes of all sizes, looking down or looking up. Let me show you how to do that. Let's start with a box. You can see my horizon line. If the top of my box goes above my horizon line, I'm going to be looking up at the box. So the tops of my boxes, or my box, are going to go back to my vanishing points, and the bottoms of my boxes are also going to go back to my vanishing points. I'm going to remove any lines that I don't want. If I want to create a box well above the horizon line so that I'm looking at the bottom, I go from my vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2, then from vanishing point 2, intersect that line, and from vanishing point 1, I intersect those two lines. Now I have bottom of a box. I create my verticals, go back to my vanishing points, remove the lines that I don't want, and I have a nice red box, and I'm looking at the bottom of that box. The same thing applies if you want to build a box that you're looking down upon. Now I have the grid down here, so I can just follow the grid. What if you have all of these diagonal lines, these perspective lines, but you don't have one right here? All you need to do is make sure that this line that you make is parallel with this perspective line. Just one more trick that you may want to know. What if you have a box and you want to sculpt it so that it's a specific shape? You want to create a roof or an awning or add another box. It's very easy to do. First, you need a box. Make sure that these lines are parallel with your perspective lines. So what I have is a cube, and we call it a cube because we can see the back sides, the top, and the bottom. All I need to subtract from this box are 3 points. The point that exists, the corner, and 2 arbitrary points. The first point I take back to the vanishing point, and where it intersects on the side of the box that I want to shave or sculpt, I make a little dot. The next point, I do the same thing, and I create a dot where it intersects with my back line, removing any lines that I don't need or want. The next thing I do is I take away the corner. And now you can see that I have the beginnings of a roof. What if I want to add something? I just take a point anywhere on my side on the side of my building or box that I want, and create a line following my perspective. Then I take the first point that I made and follow it back in perspective on the same point on the other side. Then I simply draw my lines according to the perspective and create what looks like it's going to be an awning. Bring my verticals down. If you know these basic tools, you can create any kind of environment that you want. You just have to remember it's all boxes, and remember the basic principles of following the perspective lines, and you'll have beautiful 3-dimensional looking drawings. That's it for the 2-point perspective grid. Be sure to come back and check out the new videos on perspective coming up. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to post them, and do subscribe. I appreciate your watching. Have a great day.